There is something uniquely divine about the way a woman carries silence. It is not just the absence of words. It is a sound in the spirit, a message without a mouth, a war cry wrapped in stillness. And when a woman chooses silence, not because she has nothing to say, but because she has learned not everything deserves her voice, then her silence becomes a weapon forged by wisdom. You see, when a woman truly understands her value, she stops explaining it. She doesn't waste her strength trying to convince people who are committed to misunderstanding. And her silence becomes her strategy. It becomes her sword, and it cuts deeper than arguments, deeper than debates, deeper than any insult hurled her way. Her quietness doesn't signify surrender. It is a calculated response birthed in discernment. God wired the woman with emotional intelligence so deep she can feel what's not being said, sense what's not visible, and discern motives before they manifest. That kind of depth doesn't always scream, it withdraws. And when she becomes quiet, something spiritual is happening. She is not escaping. She is observing. She is not passive. She is preparing. Because there's power in restraint. There's authority in self-control. There is destiny hidden in her silence. Sometimes the most anointed move a woman can make is to say nothing. Not because she is helpless, but because she has placed her trust in a higher wisdom. She understands that God fights her battles. She knows when to speak as a lioness and when to watch like an eagle. She knows that silence isn't always absence. Sometimes it's alignment. You must understand, when a woman goes silent, it's often a shift in position. It means she is no longer trying to change the situation with words. She is now letting God do the talking. Her silence invites conviction. Her silence becomes a mirror. It forces those around her to confront themselves without the buffer of her comfort. That's why it hurts so much, because her words could be argued with, but her silence cannot be escaped. Her silence forces reflection. It becomes the sound of boundaries. It echoes with dignity. It resounds with the echo of identity rediscovered. And when she walks in that silence, she becomes unstoppable, not because she's loud, but because she's clear. This kind of woman doesn't operate by emotion alone. She operates by revelation. She knows that not every storm deserves her energy. Not every conflict deserves her counsel. She refuses to pour oil into wounds that were self-inflicted by people who refuse to value her. Instead, she heals in silence. She rises in silence. She outgrows in silence. That is not pride. That is purpose. A silent woman who knows who she is in God is more dangerous than an army, because she doesn't need to fight for attention. Favor finds her. She doesn't need to speak to be seen. Purpose reveals her. She doesn't need to explain herself. Her fruit speaks for her. And that, my friend, is what cuts deep. Not her anger, not her frustration, but her refusal to fight in the flesh. Her decision to let peace be her protest. Her silence, anchored in divine strength, is what unsettles, what convicts, what transforms. Because in that silence, God is speaking on her behalf. Silence is often misunderstood as weakness, as if not speaking means lacking courage or influence. But nothing could be further from the truth. Silence is a deliberate and powerful choice, a calculated power that reveals strength far beyond words. It is the wisdom of knowing when to speak and when to hold your tongue, the mastery of self-control that commands respect and shifts atmospheres without uttering a sound. When a woman embraces silence, she is not retreating, she is positioning herself with strategic authority. To be silent in a world that demands constant noise requires courage. It takes a strong spirit to resist reacting impulsively, to resist explaining yourself to those who may never understand that silence is a shield, a way to protect the sacred space of your heart and your destiny. It is the power of restraint, born from deep understanding and emotional intelligence. Silence carries a weight that words cannot always hold. It forces others to confront the gravity of the situation, to reflect on their own actions, and to realize that your quietness is not ignorance, but intentional control. When silence is wielded with purpose, it becomes a tool of influence. It can disarm confrontation, diffuse tension, and communicate boundaries more effectively than any argument. It shifts the dynamic, placing power in the hands of the one who chooses when to engage. This power does not come from arrogance, but from a place of inner peace and alignment with a higher wisdom. Silence is an expression of confidence, a testament that you do not need to shout to be heard or to prove your value. True power understands the timing of words and the strength of silence. It is in the silence that decisions are made, plans are formed, and transformation begins. A woman who masters silence is mastering herself. And in that mastery, she becomes unstoppable. A woman's silence often speaks from a place of discernment and deep emotional intelligence, because it is not born out of ignorance or confusion, but out of wisdom and careful observation. When she chooses silence, it means she has assessed the situation fully. She has read between the lines, sensed the hidden motives, and understood the unspoken truths that others miss. This kind of silence is the language of insight. It reflects a mind that knows when words would be wasted or when speaking could escalate conflict unnecessarily. Emotional intelligence allows her to regulate her responses, to recognize not only her own feelings, but also the feelings and intentions of those around her. She understands the power of pause, of reflection, and of waiting for the right moment. Her silence is a response calibrated by maturity. She knows that sometimes the most effective message is not spoken but felt, not argued but demonstrated. This silence becomes a powerful form of communication, conveying strength, patience, and the ability to hold her ground without losing her composure. Such discernment shows that she is not reactive but proactive, not impulsive but intentional. She uses silence to protect her peace, to create space for clarity, and to allow truth to surface in its own time. In this quiet, she is listening to the voice of wisdom, aligning her actions with purpose and divine timing. Her silence is not emptiness, it is full of meaning, packed with the weight of understanding, and charged with the power to transform situations without a single word. This is emotional intelligence in action, a mastery of both heart and mind, revealing a woman who leads with strength and grace, even in stillness. God created women with an extraordinary power, the ability to nurture or dismantle entire atmospheres without ever speaking a word. This divine design goes beyond physical presence or verbal expression. It is a spiritual force woven into their very being. A woman's presence alone can shift the energy in a room, calming storms or stirring unrest, building up hope or tearing down despair. This is no coincidence. It is intentional. It is purpose. Through her emotions, expressions, and the depth of her spirit, a woman has the capacity to create environments where life flourishes or withers. She can breathe peace into chaos, bringing comfort and healing to those around her. Or her silence and gaze can expose truths that unsettle and break down falsehoods. Her nurturing is not limited to actions or words. It is a spiritual atmosphere she cultivates with grace and strength. Her smile, her calm, her tears, her quiet presence all carry power. The God entrusted women with this role because nurturing and dismantling are part of the divine balance necessary for growth and transformation. When a woman nurtures, she builds foundations of love, faith, and courage. When she dismantles, she tears down walls of deceit, fear, and oppression that hinder destiny. This is why her silence can be so profound. Even in stillness, she is working. Even without words, her influence is active. Her spirit ministers to environments, shaping outcomes beyond what the eye can see. This power to nurture or dismantle is a sacred responsibility. It calls for wisdom and alignment with God's purpose, so that every atmosphere she touches becomes a reflection of divine order and grace. It reminds us that the impact of a woman transcends speech. Her very essence is an instrument of change, quiet but mighty, gentle but unstoppable. When a woman goes silent, it is not the absence of communication. It is a powerful shift in authority. Silence in her mouth does not mean silence in her spirit. It signals a transition from conversation to contemplation, from reaction to revelation. It is her way of reclaiming control, asserting dominance without raising her voice or engaging in futile arguments. This silence is a throne she sits upon, a declaration that she no longer needs to negotiate her value or defend her position. In that quiet, there is a profound message. She is no longer participating in the noise of misunderstanding or distraction. Instead, she is elevating herself above it. Her silence forces others to recognize that the dynamic has changed. The power is no longer in the hands of those who seek to provoke or belittle, but in the hands of the one who chooses when and how to respond or not respond at all. The shift in authority commands respect because it demonstrates self-mastery and divine wisdom. The woman who understands when to speak and when to remain silent exercises dominion over her emotions and her environment. She communicates strength through restraint and influence through peace. Her silence becomes the platform from which she governs her destiny, not through loud proclamations, but through quiet confidence. This is not a passive state, but an active one where she watches, evaluates, and lets her silence speak volumes. It unsettles those who expect easy control, and it honors the power she holds within. When she goes silent, it is a signal that she is in charge, that she is sovereign over the conversation and over herself. In that silence, authority is not lost. It is proclaimed without a single word. Silence can expose the intentions of others more clearly than confrontation. Because when a woman chooses not to respond immediately, she creates a space where true motives reveal themselves. In the heat of conflict, words can be weapons or shields, often masking fear, insecurity, or deception. But silence removes the fuel from the fire. It stops the cycle of back and forth that can obscure truth and cloud judgment. In that quiet, the real character of those involved comes to light. When she holds her peace, it forces others to fill the void, sometimes with their true feelings, sometimes with their hidden agendas. Without the distraction of her immediate reaction, their intentions become more visible, clearer, and harder to hide. People reveal themselves through their persistence, their frustration, or their change in tone when met with silence. It is as if silence acts like a mirror, reflecting the true nature of those who expect her to react. Confrontation often leads to defensive words and confusion, but silence demands clarity. It is a filter that separates the genuine from the deceitful. It is a test that challenges people to bring their real selves forward or retreat into their masks. This is why silence is such a strategic tool. It is a way of seeing beyond surface appearances and guarding the heart against manipulation. In choosing silence, a woman guards her peace while uncovering the truth. She becomes the observer who watches how others behave when she is not engaged in the battle of words. Her quiet exposes what noise would only cover up. It reveals who is sincere, who is angry, who is fearful, and who is deceitful. Silence, therefore, is not absence. It is presence with insight. It shines light into darkness without uttering a single sound. Spiritual maturity is the compass that guides a woman to understand when her voice is necessary and when her silence will carry a weight far greater than words ever could. It is the fruit of wisdom cultivated through experience, prayer, and a deep relationship with the divine. This maturity trains her to recognize that not every battle requires her participation, and that sometimes the most powerful statement she can make is to remain quiet. A spiritually mature woman knows that speaking at the wrong time can stir up unnecessary conflict, sow discord, or even diminish her influence. She understands the value of timing, the power of a well-placed word spoken in love and authority versus words spoken in haste or emotion. Her silence is not born from fear or submission, but from a profound understanding that God's timing is perfect and his plan is unfolding even when it seems quiet. Her silence speaks louder because it is charged with purpose. It carries the calm of faith, the strength of trust, and the assurance of divine intervention. While others may rush to fill the space with noise, she waits confidently, knowing that silence can convict hearts, bring clarity, and shift atmospheres in ways that words cannot. This is spiritual discernment, knowing when to fight, when to pray, when to listen, and when to rest in God's sovereignty. Spiritual maturity equips her with patience and perspective, allowing her to rise above emotional reactions and operate from a place of peace. It teaches her that sometimes the loudest roar comes from quiet confidence, and that true power is revealed not in volume, but in authority aligned with divine wisdom. In this silence, she becomes a vessel of transformation, a testimony to the power of God working through restraint and trust. A silent woman aligned with divine purpose is not passive. She is prophetic. Her quietness is not a sign of weakness or indifference, but a profound expression of her connection to a higher calling. In that silence, she carries the weight of revelation, the power of insight, and the certainty of destiny. She moves beyond the noise of the world because she is listening to a voice greater than any crowd or conflict. Her silence is the language of prophecy, a testimony that speaks of things unseen and truths yet to unfold. This prophetic silence holds space for God to move and for divine timing to manifest. It is in her stillness that visions become clear, that strategies form, and that the future begins to take shape. She is not idle. She is engaged in a spiritual process, waiting on wisdom, receiving instruction, and preparing to act with precision. Her silence commands respect because it communicates authority rooted in faith and purpose. A woman who is prophetic in her silence understands that sometimes the loudest declaration is made without a word. Her presence alone shifts atmospheres, and her quiet confidence unsettles the enemy. She is a vessel through which God speaks without interruption, and her silence becomes a powerful sermon echoing with divine truth. This kind of woman moves in peace amidst chaos, in calm amidst storms, and in faith amidst uncertainty. Her silence is a powerful testimony of trust in God's plan and timing. It is prophetic because it anticipates victory, it declares authority, and it sets in motion the fulfillment of divine promises. In her silence, the future is spoken not in human words, but in heavenly decree. A woman's silence is never empty. It is charged with power, purpose, and prophetic authority. It is the language of strength that does not need to be shouted, the force that moves mountains without making noise. When she chooses silence, she is not hiding. She is positioning herself for destiny. She is demonstrating a wisdom that commands respect and a faith that trusts the unseen hand of God. Never underestimate the quiet power of a woman who knows when to speak and when her silence will speak louder than any words. In that silence, she becomes unstoppable. Because true power is not in how loudly you declare yourself, but in the authority you carry when you hold your peace.